Shrikant Kondapalli, Professor in Chinese Studies at JNU, into the conversation as well. Professor Kondapalli, thank you for speaking to us at India Today, and a very good afternoon to you. My first question to you would be the fact that, the Chinese counterpart, or rather the Chinese side at this given point, has come out to say that multilateralism and multipolar world should be the focus. Development should be the focus. And India and China aren't rivals, but they are partners who should be working in collaboration. While these statements come in, yes, at a very crucial time, the question is whether they shall hold true in the upcoming days. Whether we will actually see China playing a part in pushing forward to a multilateral world order, or what we've seen in the past, wherein China always ends up coming in and pushing itself ahead. So that what it does then is it just replaces a certain nation in the West with a certain nation in the East, and there is no multipolarity involved at the end of the day. So your mic is mute. If you could just unmute yourself.
Thank you, Shreya, for having me on the show. These are very noble statements that we should see this as civilizational states as part of the global South. We are not rivals, but partners. These are very noble, but the problem is whether China will walk the talk on these issues. For example, if we are not rivals, but partners, would that reflect in China withdrawing troops in the border areas? We have a disengagement, but this disengagement is not really, they are still in the border areas, about 3-4 kilometers away. So this is not really significant in the sense of remobilization of forces within a few hours into the border areas. We have also patrolling and grazing. So the buffer zones have been created, which creates some other problems in logistics. The third is there is no de-escalation on the border and no de-induction on the border. So these remains very crucial when we look at the partnership between China and India, as President Xi mentioned. It is a noble thought, but we need to see what is actually happening on the border. We need to look at this more carefully. Second is, if we are to be partners, there should be no complaints on the trade deficits, which stands today at around $1.4 trillion in favor of China and to the detriment of India. This much of trade deficit has been accumulated in the last 15 years. So if we are partners, what China is actually doing in terms of reducing the trade deficit, that will be monitored. Thirdly, if we are partners, then the foreign direct investment should increase from both sides. But the total Chinese investment in India is $8.2 billion. For an economy of $18 trillion, the total investment is just about $8 billion in India. So that we need to also monitor whether China will walk the talk. For instance, in September 2014, President Xi visited India. He promised $20 billion, but nothing really came out of it. So whether these will remain only promises, but hardly any change on the ground, that also we need to see in this context. In relation to what you mentioned as the multipolarity, multilateralism, this meeting is about multilateralism and multipolarity primarily, but with the exception of the 50-minute meeting between the two leaders for the bilateral ties, where all these have been mentioned, the visas, direct flights. These are actually marginal in bilateral relations. What we need to see is whether there is concrete progress on the border, on the economic development and other areas. The multipolarity aspect is, of course, very crucial given the recent tariff announcements on all countries by the United States. But however, whether this will be driven mainly by bilateral interests or multilateral, we also have to see. For example, US imposed tariffs 50% effectively on India since August 27th. But there are no major tariffs on China except for the legacy tariffs.
Right.
So whether India China should have you know equivalent position on the US, that also is problematic because China had promised to remove the magnets and rare earth metals on the United States. And so there is a quid pro quo between China and the US. But we have not seen China plus India working in terms of the tariffs overall on the United States. So that also need to be taken care of when we discuss the progress in the bilateral relations.
Absolutely. Professor Kondapalli, you've summed it up very well at the very beginning as to what all needs to be looked at the ground when we speak of relations improving between the two countries. Gaurav, I would like to bring you in the conversation as well. Would you want to pick it up from here?
So, it is a very difficult relationship between India and China. There are very sweet words. We want to see if those sweet words are followed up by sweet action on ground. In our entire interaction with even journalists in China or in our interaction with sources here, the entire conversation is how does this relationship move forward? The Chinese side, not just my conversation with journalists, but otherwise, their plan is let a future generation decide borders. It's a legacy issue. Let future generations, a smarter generation, decide the solution. But India has repeatedly told China that's just not possible. You cannot have tension at the border or friction at the border and economic ties growing, even though, frankly, to a very large extent, there have been tensions at the border and economic ties have grown. What's also very worrisome, and Professor Kondapalli can give us better details about it because he's actually looked at it historically. Each time there is a significant bilateral visit, whether of an Indian head of government to China or a Chinese head of state to India, or even their premiers when they come to India, there's sweet conversation that's happening at the bilateral level. At the same time, there is incursion that is happening on ground. It's only in post, Doklam 2017 and Galwan 2020 that you have enough troops on ground to ensure that there are no fresh incursions. Because one point of time, India said thus far and no further. You cannot keep creeping forward inch by inch, year on year. You come for a sweet visit and there's a lot of talk about investment in each other's country or China investing in India, but then you have border incursions, and India has made that very clear. You cannot have border incursions and visits. So that is why you have about 50,000 troops amassed on borders. But that also is not a condition that can prevail forever. You cannot make the LAC practically into an LOC. You're losing a lot of men and material all along the line of control. Now there's a similar situation along the line of actual control, where the Chinese also may be losing a large number of people. But then, unfortunately, given their actions in Galwan 2020 and Pangong Tso and all along, you have near permanent deployment. Now, disengagement has taken place, so you're no longer eyeball to eyeball from the remaining two friction points. When I was reporting from Kazan, that was the big story, that from those two friction points, disengagement has happened. However, there is no de-escalation. You're not moving back your heavy artillery and rockets and tanks and all your entire armor. And there is no de-induction. So that means you have another border, another live border that's come up all along the LAC from Arunachal Pradesh through Sikkim, through Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and to Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. It's a very tough situation. So can you ease up there? If it's not possible to ease up there, does the relationship move forward on the other, prongs? All of that are very complex issues that the country is grappling with. And then you're then bombarded with these American tariffs. So in all of this, India is trying to see what best can you make out of a bad situation.